Welcome to the Go Roadie podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brand. Today, we're going to be talking about an issue that is bigger than sports. Last week, PC played BYU at the Mika Arena in Providence, and they were caught chanting offensive remarks to members of the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints. So that was they suffered some backlash, but with some quick feet from the athletic director, Steve Napolillo, who's a great guy. He apologized quickly, and it became a thing on Twitter, but now it's over. And I'd like to introduce David Hucksdale, who's known as BYU Florida. Okay. And also Oliver, who is a member of the church. I'm going to abbreviate that a little bit, and I met him on Twitter. He has some strong feelings about the incident as well. So we'll be talking to David specifically about what actually went down, and then Oliver about his thoughts on that. I did invite some members of the Providence student body. They declined to come. I don't blame them. It's not a comfortable conversation, but I think sometimes we have to talk about uncomfortable conversations, and there's a method behind my madness, because this, as you will hear later, is not an isolated incident. But before we go talking about it, I'd like to play the videotape quickly. I'm going to go to you, David Hucksdale, BYU, Florida. You were at the game. What happened?
Yeah, so I actually took that video.
Really?
Yes. So, yeah, that was the thing, is like maybe we were oblivious to what we were going into. Apparently, it's a pretty hostile environment. I was just, I had no idea. My brother lives in New England, lives in Connecticut. So he was like, "Hey, there's some cheap flights from Orlando to Connecticut. Why don't you fly up here? Can grab some food, go to the BYU Providence game, can fly back." I'm like, "Oh, that'd be sweet." So went up there. Didn't really know much about Providence, other than they're in the Big East. They've had they had a really good year in 2022, and so didn't really know much going into it. But it very apparent as soon as we walked in the doors. Man, it was just Mormons this, Mormons that, more, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to get my camera ready.
Started before the chants.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know we were sitting like right above the student section. But yeah, so I was just a little puzzled. We were all just kind of like, what the heck is going on? I guess we didn't think in this area there'd be such strong feelings towards Mormons. Which is ironic, because it's weird going into those situations, and I'm just thinking out towards the LDS members, the Mormons who reside, who are going to I'm sure there were some in that student section, or who work for the school, or who are alumni, who live in the community. I know people there who cheer for Providence who are Mormons. So I'm just kind of thinking of them when, all this is being said. I'm like, guys, this is a religious. I know BYU is affiliated with the church, but half the team isn't, maybe even more, isn't even Mormon on BYU. So it becomes more of a directed chant towards the religion than the team or the school. And so that was kind of the experience going in, and then the chant started a few times, and then it got really strong there, and that's when I decided to film it. And I think it was right after that is when the athletic director got up and was like, "Guys, what are you doing? Stop this!" And after that, the chant never happened again. And I think they were all kind of like, "Oh, whoa!" I think the students were like, "Oh, whoa, that's probably not something we should do." But yeah, after that, hats off to Providence. Absolutely destroyed BYU. But yeah, BYU played an awful game. Providence played out of their minds. I've never seen a team shoot that hot ever in any game I've ever been to. But honestly, other than that moment, a lot of great things to say about my whole Providence in general. Great arena. I was blown away. That is a high quality arena, super well attended. Everyone was into the game. Great environment. It's really cool. I think that's the first time I've been to a Big East game like on the road. So that was really cool to experience. And it was just kind of one of those games. I sit back, I'm like, well, man, they're shooting out of their minds. There's nothing we can do. They're just making everything. So, but yeah, that was overall experience.
Well, you're a very tolerant person, and I think that's respectful, and this is important. And when did this start? Was this like immediately into the game? I understand that Providence had a lead. I don't know how quickly they were taking command of the game, but when did the chants start?
It was maybe halfway through the first half.
Mm.
Because then I remember after that, it was like right after the chant, they were up by 12 or 13 points, I think, is when that started. And then BYU cut it back down to 4, like made a big run and cut it back down. And yeah, but it was pretty early on in the game.
Well, you were there, and you could see the size of the group that was chanting. How many people do you think were involved in that?
I mean, it looked like most people were.
People in that whole section.
Yeah, in the whole student section there. But I do respect that, after the AD said something and that they, and I actually did have a really good interaction at halftime. I went out and I think they were, I was talking to a group of students and they're like, so are you a Mormon? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, have you guys ever met a Mormon? They're like, no. And I'm like, well, uh, they're probably going to be a little hesitant now, if there are any in your section or at your school, to say something after hearing that. Um, but I think they started to be like, okay, maybe that isn't something that we should we should chant.
Well, I think part of the problem is that we're so sheltered now in our society, and there's lots of religious intolerance. So the fact that you went over and talked to them is a great outcome of this, and a positive one. And I'd like to say, if it's 14,000 people at the arena, then it really typifies Providence fans. Ollie, you have some different viewpoints on it, in the sense that the incident didn't bother you as much as the comments on Twitter. Is that right? Or am I missing out on?
Yes. No. And at first, it's just more like kind of, it's a little like off-taking because you hear it. And I think like the first thing to me as a member of the church is just like, there's not a lot of other schools that are perfectly associated with a certain religion, but you also like rarely hear of things with like Notre Dame or people like that getting chanted like, F the Catholics, or things
true.
like that. And so I think it was more just like that kind of situation. And I was like, that happens. And like, it sounded like it didn't go on throughout the entire game. So like, but then I was like going through comments on Twitter and I saw stuff on Instagram and people were like, I was kind of frustrated until I found out it was the Mormons, or like the Mormons deserve this. Like they're not even real Christians. And it's coming from people that are framing themselves as Christians. And it's just kind of funny because you're like, that's almost completely opposite of everything you say you stand for, to have a situation like that. Like I remember in 2022, BYU football went and played in Eugene against the University of Oregon in football, and they had huge chants like that. And like, it's funny because I'm like, you have a couple members of the church starting on your team and members that have played for your school that are like pretty well-known players that got drafted high and you guys hold the high regard, and it just is a bad image. And I think it's just the fact that some people feel because they don't agree or they don't believe that like members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Christians, that they almost have free reign to mock.
Mhm.
And it's less about like a soft skin, because like I really like it sports, you get those like FU chants, you know, like if
Yeah.
we're FU Cougars, FU BYU, you know, like go that back to Provo, stuff like that. It's like, all right, like that's a normal, as much as it's like maybe choice of language, it's like that's a normal sports environment thing. But to bring religion in when, like David said, it's not even like half of the team, if not more, are not members or do not, you know, go to that church. Like it's just more of a ignorance and intolerance thing rather than like a, oh, this is just sports. And so it's just sad to see all these people that like self-proclaim themselves like as Christians go on to be like, hey, you know, like this is okay because they're Mormons, they're not Christians. Whereas like when I see Jewish people mocked or other sects of Christianity mocked for things, my first thought isn't like, oh, that's okay because I believe differently than them. Like it's like no one should be persecuted or mocked because of their religious beliefs. Mock me because I'm a BYU fan or a Patriots fan, you
Mhm.
know, like do something like that. Like, but when it comes to that religion, it crosses a line that I think a lot of people don't realize is crossed because they don't agree with it. And it's like, if I don't agree with it, it's fine to say that.
You brought up a good point. I was going to say this. I did a little sleuthing, and that Oregon game against BYU that you were talking about was really a tough one because it lasted a long time. And I understand a woman was in the stands. She didn't want to get antagonized by the fans that were chanting pretty much the same thing. And finally, since it went on so long, she just did get her camera out and took pictures, and it made the news. So that was a rough one. But I wanted to say this is not a PC thing. This is not, and it's not an isolated incident. It's a problem, and that's the reason why I came on today. I'm not here to bash Providence. They're just like anyone else. There's good people, then there's others that are saying things, and then there's the followers who are probably not even knowing what they're saying. They're just chanting, and you put alcohol in there and you get the perfect storm. So that is an interesting point. But the problem with that is there isn't that much coverage on it. I looked, there's coverage in Utah, there's coverage in New England, a couple of other places, but we can't normalize bigotry. We have to make it something that people should be uncomfortable doing. And I'm hoping today that lots of people learn that lesson. And just like you said, there's Jewish people. I'm Jewish. I went to college at University of Rhode Island. I had my car parked at a fraternity. This was quite a long time ago. And my car was painted with all kinds of anti-Semitic things on there. I went and I contacted the media, and it became a local story, then the Boston Globe, then the Jewish Defense League, which I wasn't wanting it to break out to that extent. But the reason why I did it is because people have to understand we do not live in a tolerant society. Totally. There are bad actors, and we should recognize that and understand it and strive to be better. Unfortunately, where I lived, they didn't like me mentioning that. It made them feel that it made the fraternity look bad. But privately, people came up to me and told me, I'm so glad you did that. So I don't know, maybe if it was a different religious group or a minority, it might have had more attention. But it seems like when this happens to the Mormons, they take it collectively very well, and I don't hear much of a pushback on that. And I admire that, but I'd rather just help them and bring this into a discussion. So that's what I was bringing up. What's your thoughts on that?
That's a really good point. So did you know BYU's quarterback this year is Jewish? Jake Retzlaff. Well, so he had some interesting comments. Yeah, I think he's the only current Jewish, Division One quarterback, as far as I know. But Jewish quarterback playing for a Mormon school as yeah, very very good. From what I've seen, just very good dialogue. Like the rabbis in Utah have been become very big BYU Jake Retzlaff fans, and it's just been a really cool experience. He gets questions asked by tons of BYU students about the Jewish faith, and vice versa. He's learning a lot about Mormon faith and history. But one of the interesting things, this was actually I believe it was one of the rabbis commented on the video from Providence, and linked a interview I think he had with Jake Retzlaff, where Jake is, now he's kind of seeing it from the eyes of a Jewish quarterback, seeing all the how just so natural and so easy and so accepted to hate Mormons in the mainstream. Uh, he gets to see it from a perspective as a non-Mormon. But so he said basically I'll just read real quick. Jake Retzlaff, the Jewish quarterback for BYU's football team, said he's shocked by how often he hears anti-Mormons chants like this and how little outrage it ever seems to provoke. And what was it? Senator Mike Lee out of Utah also commented on the video, and he says, "Imagine you saw video footage of someone who works for you gleefully chanting F the Mormons at a BYU game. What would you do?"
Yeah.
So it luckily, again, you said it is mostly in the Utah, BYU, Rhode Island has really been the only ones covering it. It hasn't made big national outrage, but it does happen. And then like these videos will come up one or two times a year at just certain schools, and we'll talk about it and say like this, why is it just so accepted, and then it kind of dies off, like I'm sure this one has or already will. But I think I do appreciate you just having us on here to talk about it, and go over these things. I think it is important. And yeah, like I said, when I did talk to some of the students at the Providence game, I think I hope it comes as a learning experience, not like not that they're have to be this way forever, but we can take and be like, okay, maybe that's not okay, and
Yeah.
we can change. Let's keep it to sports. I think that's our biggest plea, is like, let's just keep it to sports. Let's leave religion out of it, because like I said, there's members of the church in that area who, yeah, I'm sure love Providence, cheer for Providence. Just like me, I'm in Central Florida. I love UCF. They're kind of the local team. I cheer for them when I'm not cheering for BYU. So if I went to half their home games this year in football. And if I went to those games and I started hearing them start huge chant the F the Mormons, I'd be like, guys, like, what do you like? There's lots of us here who love Orlando. We love UCF. Like you're isolating a big, a chunk of your community who loves and supports you. So
Well, it sounds like what was a bad thing that went on turned into a positive outcome due to your efforts and the tolerance from the fans who knows, maybe some of them weren't making the chant, but now PC is a better place for that. And there's an understanding and an education between the two groups. So I view this, I know I always try to take the positive side, but I think Providence, like I said, is a better place for this. And just because this doesn't happen in Rhode Island or Notre Dame or other schools, maybe it does, doesn't mean that we don't have a problem there. And I'd rather get it out in the open and have a discussion. I wanted to bring out I read an article this morning and someone had a suggestion, the author of an article. He said, universities should counsel fans and students about good sportsmanship. They should set public expectations and take measures to enforce them. They should send personnel into the crowd when necessary, and in extreme circumstances like yours, remove offending fans. They should hold fans and students as well as staff members who act as amused as bystanders to a reasonable standard of accountability. I think that's it. If you had some kind of educational forum from this, that would be great. I'd welcome anyone from PC to get involved in that, or others who aren't even involved in the incident. So it's a combination of education, lack of understanding. For some reason, they have these feelings towards Mormons, and it happened. But your response and your comments, Oliver, have been very helpful today. And if you have any other thoughts, I'm open to them. But I'm very happy that you came on and got that point.
No, thank you so much, and thank you, like David said, like thank you for doing this, because I think like me as a fan, like I wasn't there. I've been a BYU fan for life. I think it's just hopefully one day, no matter what school it is, whether it's chanting about BYU or other schools, like just getting to a point where we can have fun and like you can chant the different things, right? Like, but keep it about like the school or the sports, because I think sports is it's a fun way to link so many different people. Like when you're sitting in a crowd, you don't know if people are, they're, gay, straight, Jewish, Christian, Muslim. Like you don't know. You're just there enjoying the sport and the activity. And I think when we keep it to sport, it's more fun and it's more unifying. And that's like such a great and fun part about sports of any level, is the fact that we can all get together and enjoy one like specific purpose, which is to win a game. And I hope that one day we can just get to a point where that's really all we think about in sports, and we don't have to worry about like anybody having any type of ridicule outside of, hey, your point guard is not playing very well, your point guard's trash, or like your quarterback kind of sucks right now, and we just leave it to the stuff on the field or on the court, rather than let's bring in all these other obscure things or different things about the schools and or teams to try and rile them up.
Well, that's a great way to summarize what we talked about today. I have a favor for both of you. Before we conclude this podcast, can I get a go roadie from both of you, and then we'll say goodbye? Or is that asking too much?
No, not at all. Well, you're the only one who asked us to come on and talk about this. So go, Rhodey. It was great experience. I'd love to go to a Rhode Island game one day. That'd be very special, amazing.
Love to have you. Oliver, come on. I'm waiting.
Hey, go Rhodey. Yeah, like David said, like you've been more than helpful and a very kind and gracious host on this, and I would not think a second thought about talking with you again or having any interaction with you, and would recommend that to anyone. And I have family back east, so I'm a huge New England guy. So I could see myself coming out there and having a really good time with the people and the fans. So go Rhodey.
All right, let's get this out there though, fellas, because there's a lot to learn and it can change the perception. People say, well, I can only change one person's view, and that's enough. I don't believe that. We need more than one person. It sounds good, but I'd like to see 100,000 people, not just because of my YouTube standing. Anyway, guys, when it comes to Rhodey basketball, it's always go Rhodey. Thanks again for stopping by.